Good morning and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this latest iteration of the Indic Book Club Open House with Otis. We've been doing this for more than 6-7 months now, and you know the drill by now, which is if you are interested in improving your writing and getting feedback from an accomplished, acknowledged writer, then we suggest that you make use of this opportunity and send in your writing piece, about 800 words in length or so, double space, Times New Roman, font size 12, send it as a PDF, and there's an email address given on the indicacademy.org website as to where to send this piece. Otis will review it, he will mark up his feedback, he will send it back to you, and then when we convene and meet on Sundays, he will pick those pieces and give his feedback and probably make you read some of the passages and talk about the do's, the don'ts, the good habits, the best practices of writing, things such as point of view and a lot of actually very, very useful things that you may have to read several books and watch several videos to try and figure out, and you get all of that from Otis in a very compressed form and manner. So with that, Otis, I will turn this over to you while I switch on the Facebook feed.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So we have we just have two pieces this week, but they're both great pieces and will be great pieces to talk about. Ashvani's piece and Jay's piece. I think I was discussing with some other people that, we get a lot of emails. So if I've somehow missed something, and it's fallen into the list of however many emails, most of them junk that I get, and I missed your piece, please let me know and resend it, and I'm happy to do it for next week. But I think I only have two this week. Let's start with Ashvani's piece. Thanks for sending it in, Ashvani. I know I count on you and, twist your arm to get things in. So we have something to talk about. I can't. You have to unmute.
I was saying I'm very happy to do it and to receive your comments. Very grateful for that. Thank you.
Okay. Abhinav, I think you have to enable my sharing, so I'll share the screen.
Oh, give me 1 sec. Let me figure out what I did wrong or what I have to do.
You did nothing wrong. You did things right, but in a different way.
Like that. Okay, let's see. I can't share screen. No, I don't want to share screen. I want to get people to share screen. Who can all? Okay, there you go. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Okay. Ashvani, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this piece and what you were going for with it.
Okay. Recently, Enid Blyton was in the news because, there was a lot of news reports saying that in the past she had been classified as sexist, and many other adjectives were used for her. But at the same time, there were other reports. In the same reports, people went gaga over her writing. And I sort of felt that, I was personally invested in all those reports because as a kid, I literally grew up on Enid Blyton. I read every book of Enid Blyton in our library. I don't know how many number of times. So I thought that, maybe this would be a nice thing to write about. But of course, there was a constraint of writing only 750 to 800 words, which I still exceeded. But had it been 3,000 words, it would have been a different kettle of fish.
If it had been 3,000 words, it would have been, 3,000 words.
Can I ask you one?
Yeah.
It is a couple of places I have not been able to make out what you've said. In this, the paragraph which starts with a big fat 9. On the page which is showing.
No, the first page. One?
The first page.
Okay, go ahead. Then what? Yeah.
The first page which you are displaying, the margin, the remark in the margin, I'm not, is it, I like what you are going for?
Right, exactly. I like what you're going for. So,
Okay.
oh yeah, I see what you're saying. A big fat 9.
And the other thing which I couldn't make out was a little, down the page, your remark starting with "wish you could teach us."
Right.
This one.
So
wish.
Yeah, we'll talk. We might as well start. We'll start with this, Ashwani.
Okay.
But for everyone else, let's have you just read. Can you read a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Let's see. I'm just gonna make this little mark here. Just read to that green section. No, she's a bit grown up for that. So just the beginning to there.
Okay. The doorbell rang a second time, even as Aruna grappled with her slumber. Getting out of bed on a cold, clammy Delhi winter morning was not exactly pleasant. The fact that dawn was still battling with the fog outside made it more difficult. Who could it be at this hour? As a single parent, her fears included one of unwanted visitors. A precautious glance through the peephole assuaged her qualms. It was her father. His white, bushy walrus mustache embellished with beads of moisture, and his mouth emitting tiny, short-lived clouds of vapor into the cold air. Aruna hastened to open the door and saw he was carrying a large gift-wrapped package. A big fat 9 pasted in blue decorative ribbon on the side of the package, all bedecked in silver foil, reminded her of something that the alarm caused by the early morning doorbell ring had pushed back momentarily. Today was Agrima's 9th birthday. Come in, don't stand out there in the cold, she cried out, half entreaty, half command. Ushering him to a sofa, she turned on a heat convector and carefully aimed it at her father where he sat. You shouldn't have started so early. Agrima is still asleep. Wanted to surprise her as she awoke. He grinned childishly. Aruna nodded, acknowledging in her mind the intense bond she sensed between her daughter and her father. As she set about preparing tea in the open kitchen, she asked, "What have you brought her this time? Another dollhouse?" "No, she is a bit grown up for that."
Okay, thank you. And then we find out about the Enid Blyton books. So yeah, let me tell you a little something about my markings so you can tell. When I do markings like this, the little squiggly line, it means that there's some kind of problem that I'm perceiving. I don't necessarily know what it is, and I don't know how to talk about it 100%, but I just do the squiggly line because somehow to my ear, it doesn't sound quite right. I have to admit, I mean, obviously we can see that this sentence is kind of long. This is micro. We're just going to deal with a couple micro things to start with. We can see that it's a very long sentence, obviously, but what ends up happening is this is a little thing that you can get used to. When we're writing, our sentences are basically music. So we shouldn't think of our language really as words 100%. And they're not 100% the words, the meaning of the words. We might think that, but to a large degree, they're also the music of the syllables in the reader's head, and they form certain kinds of rhythms. We usually, if it's done well, we don't notice that. But if it's done in a way that kind of, is disruptive to the reader, then we do. And this is something I find not just in this sentence, this is really for everybody. We'll start to do these sort of staccato small words and syllables. So we see, a big fat 9 pasted in blue decorative ribbon on the side of the package, all bedecked in silver foil. That's fine. Reminded her of something that the alarm caused by the early morning doorbell ring had pushed back momentarily, right? So ... So that's a lot of syllables, right? That's a lot. And and it has, we do, Ashvani, you're a wonderful writer, so I hope we understand that. And your writing allows us to go to a very high level of discussion, immediately. So I think that that's really great. So obviously talking about the rhythm of our sentences is a high level of discussion. But we can see that we then have kind of a cascade of these syllables that come to us. Remind her of something that the alarm caused by the early morning doorbell ring had pushed back momentarily, right? So it's kind of a style thing. But when I make this comment here, I like what you're going for, because what you're trying to do with all this language is discuss the sort of psychological action for this woman as she's answering the door, right? That all of this stuff is coming at her at once. There's this fear, but then the fear sort of gets pushed back by the sight of the father, So I think it's a really interesting thing that you're going for. And so I want to encourage that, because I think that when we start to try to get into that level of the psycho-emotional experience of our character, I think we're doing really good work. So that's why you end up getting squiggly lines, and I like what you're going for. And maybe those things actually go together, is we kind of do write these sort of clunky, ungainly sentences when we are going for something that's a little bit special. And I think that in some ways, even though this is clunky and the rhythm is off, it's probably the most interesting sentence in this piece. Then this one, so we have the Enid Blyton books. Ashvani, I know, as strange as it might be, not everybody knows who this person is. Who I don't. I think I'm the one that's out of the loop. Okay, that's clear. So I don't know this person, and so when I say I wish you could teach us these first, this is my thought process. When I read this, I don't know the significance of these books. So when they appear on the page, when actually they're not really even appearing yet because they're wrapped up. So when they are spoken of, I don't have any idea what the meaning is of them. And I don't know what they mean to either of the characters, but we're going to talk about either of the characters in a second, because you really have to, you do have to decide on whose point of view you're going to be dealing with. But then, so when I read that, I was like, you need to somehow set it up. And this is where it can become a little bit difficult. So how do you set this up? I was thinking about it, because I start doing my rewriting in my head, basically. How can you set this up so that it can work? It kind of can't work with the father/grandfather saying that he brought the books, because you don't have, yeah, go ahead, Ashvani.
I know how to do it. I need 500 words more.
Ashvani, I keep trying to tell you, I've always assigned these short assignments because you can see everything in a short period of time.
Right.
And I always get people who will say it's the number of words that's the problem. It's like, no. That famous author that said, at the end of this letter, he wrote, "Sorry to have written you such a long letter. I didn't have time to make it shorter."
Okay.
So.
Okay, this is the last time I use that alibi.
But this is the way I think about it. Okay, so I see this problem. The reader has to understand what these books are, and they also really actually have, because the books right now, we're going to get into this a little bit, but You know, the daughter is the primary character here. We don't really stick with her, and we actually, this is the big issue of this story, we don't really tell her story so much. We don't talk about her journey and what this confrontation will end up meaning for her, or how it changes her. That's what a story is. What it becomes is sort of basically just a dialogue and an antagonism, and I think that that was good, Ashwani. I think it's a good vehicle of antagonism to use these books, but it doesn't end up bursting into something more significant for these characters. So it ends up being sort of, you know, basically like a political statement. I mean, it's maybe like the articles that you read. Some people argue this way about the books, and some people argue this way. It's like, at the end of the day, that's not what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with political arguments. We're dealing with a transition of character that's caused by a character who is going about their everyday experience, being confronted by something, and through that confrontation ending up changed. That's what we're doing. You have the basic structure for that here, because you have this woman, the daughter, essentially being confronted by the father, who has, I hesitate to say, antiquated ideas, right? He has older ideas. He has various associations, and she has more modern ideas. But really, in the end, it's not a question of old ideas and new ideas in conflict. It's actually a story about a daughter and a father in conflict. That's what the story, I mean, if we want to raise this story up to universal significance, most people don't care about the books, but everyone cares about their relationships with their parents. And even beyond that, even the relationship with parents speaks to something that's even more universal, just our relationships with other people. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go ahead and say that our relationships with other people are the most important things that we have in our lives. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I had a mentor that he was the same mentor that said, I would have rather cut off my hands at the wrist than write this paragraph. That same mentor said, we have to write about relationships. We all know this, right? I mean, our society and our culture can act as if money and possessions are the most important things in life. But as we develop as human beings, there is certainly a time when we realize that relationships are the most important things that we have in our life, right? So that's why stories about relationship and conflict in relationship
Your video appears to have stopped, Otis. Otis, I see your video has stopped and there's no audio either.
Yeah, Otis's video is stopped. I think it's probably some network outages. So let's give him a couple of minutes. I'm sure he'll join back.
No, I was just saying it aloud so that if I'm the only one affected, then somebody tells me.
No. This is even I'm seeing his video is frozen.
Okay. Thanks, Avid.
Yeah, not at all, Ashwini. So Ashwini, what I didn't quite catch that. What was Otis's point about this particular paragraph? You know, the one that he has marked with squiggly blue lines and then highlighted with a green line.
He said that the syllables, you know, they don't. There are too many syllables in quick succession, and they don't sound good. So your writing should sound like music. You know, it's an arrangement that you which makes it smooth and readable. So this one, he said that what you're getting for this sentence by itself is good, and I understand where you are getting to, but the way it is put into words, that is not good.
I see. I see. Okay. Now that's good to know.
Yeah. No, but the lesson there, of course, is about editing, I guess, because if I had spent more time editing, done the editing exercise 4 or 5 times, even now when he's pointing it out, when I read it, it appears to me, yes, there is some problem there, but probably I didn't spend enough time editing it.
So sometimes it happens with me, when I write a sentence, I forget to put full stop, and I put full stop, and suddenly it feels like somebody has pushed a gun trigger, and the sentence is like half, 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 half. So sometimes it happened to me that I write sentence in a flow, and I forget to put full stops.
Otis is back with us, I think.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Otis.
We can see you also.
Okay. That was very weird. It both shut me down, and I also lost my mouse and my control for a little while too. So.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know what happened. So let me see if I can go back to this share. Oh no, I don't. Sorry, I don't have that open. Sorry, I'm a little bit. So let's see. What was I railing about on poor Ashvani when the time that I got cut out? Let's see. Okay, thanks. I think I have it here. Okay. Okay, can you see my share?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so basically, this is the biggest issue, and what you've done here is actually you've provided the sketch, and thank goodness, Ashvani, you should be thankful you did it in 750 words rather than 3,000. You set up a sketch of something that could be a powerful story, and if you can keep this anywhere near, because it is a small event, it's almost just a scene in which this daughter and father have this conflict over these books that were meaningful for him and probably did shape the way he sees the world to some extent, and that the daughter rejects from her modern standpoint. That conflict is a very interesting one, but what that conflict should end up speaking to is either the ability for this grandfather and daughter to have some kind of connection or not have a connection. It should finally say something about that relationship, and that's our most important subject, I think. So I would just share that. I think I've said a while ago that our purpose, if we want to write something, I know you're not doing this, but if we want to write something that's, let's say, political or sociological or philosophical, we wouldn't do it with characters, I think, right? That the most important thing that we're trying to do is put characters on the page. That's the number one thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to get, and I've said before, people are miracles. I have no judgment about human beings. We're miraculous. We're miraculously complex. We do good things that we don't know about. We do bad things that we justify with various reasons. We're just this, this incredibly complex mix of our actions and these ideas that we have about our actions. So human beings are really miraculous as individuals, and we want to get that miraculous individual as much as we can onto the page. And then what we do is we get them interacting with another miraculous individual, and we see that conflict between them. And what we're finally speaking about is human relationship, right? Human being, human relationship. That is our subject. And we write about that because that's also what our reader finally wants to know about. Whether they think that the only thing that matters in life is money and possessions or worldly goods, whatever it is, that's what they think. But what the heart tells us is that other people are the things that are most important to us. And so they care about their relationships too. The ones that fail, the few that succeed, and they want to learn about that. And they want to learn how to, traverse this, this complex world of relationships that we have. Okay, so that's the big picture here, that we sort of just remain in this this discussion of the books, and the books are not finally what's important. So that's a big issue. But I think oh yeah, go ahead, Ashwani.
Can your remarks at the bottom of the page on the right hand side, I'll just read it out. Can you tell me whether I'm reading it correct? Wish you could teach us what those are first. I am sure there is a way you will want to get into the head of Aruna.
Right. Okay. So this is where I'm going. So when I see a problem like this, the first thing that goes on in my head, right, is that I'd say, I don't know what these books are. I don't know what meaning they have. And right now, as I read these words, as I read the words in Enid Blyton books, it's spoken, I see nothing, I understand nothing. So I'm right. But I want to make the point for all of us. When this happens, as I'm a reader, right? So like my job is I read like this and it happens to me and then I figure out how to fix it. But what happens to most readers is when that happens, I look at words, nothing is happening in my brain. That means I leave the work. I'm gone, right? I am only going to engage with the work when I'm only going to continue reading when the words actually engage my brain, and engage my heart also. My brain and my heart must be engaged for me to continue reading. So that means to me, we cannot have it like this. So how do we fix it? This is where my experience counts. You might be like, I don't know how to fix it. This is how we fix it. We have to see the books. So right now, as you've plotted it, the books are wrapped. So that means that we cannot get into this discussion of these books until the books are opened. And this is because we can't have the Father say the name of the books. What we really need, because we're in the point of view of Aruna, is for her to see the books. That way, Aruna sees the books. She tells us what they look like so that the reader can see them, right? That's what happens. The characters see, the characters smell, the characters hear, they touch, etc., so that the reader can have the verisimilitude of the experience of human sensation, concrete interaction with the world. That's why we do that. But then when we have Aruna see the books, she will also be flooded with feelings. And we want to we don't want to write her feelings. This is something I said in another class yesterday, and I thought it was good. Every now and then I come up with a way to say something, and I want to try to remember it. The writer does not write feelings. The writer makes feelings in the reader. Okay? In Hollywood, they say, my character doesn't cry, so my reader will. That's something to take away and put on our computer. But basically, I'll go back to the idea, we do not write feelings. We don't write, she felt da 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 da. No, we don't do that. We want to write things that make the reader feel things. That's why we dramatize. But we do, in a sense, and as much as possible, we want to use concrete detail and concrete language to evoke the feelings of the reader, because abstract language simply doesn't do it. So to recast this, I don't know where you start. So we can talk about that in a second. But basically, I would need to get this package unwrapped. That way, Aruna can see them, and we can get a visual description of them. And then we want to get concrete language that represents her response to seeing these books, because she knows them in some way. And through that, we might even learn something about the contents of these books, not just the labels. Right now, they're labeled as xenophobic, sexist, racist. They're labeled with all of these things. But Aruna, because she knows the books, I imagine, might be able to access things that demonstrate those points of view. And that's going to be much more effective for the reader.
Got it.
That's a huge, long explanation, what I want everyone to sort of learn is that as writers, we have certain problems. And our major problem is, how do we give information to the reader so that the reader will end up feeling something? That is our big issue. And what we do is we basically sequence information, in order. So I look at this and I'm saying, well, this is not sequenced in order, because when the father mentions these books, I don't know what they are. So that means that I have to know what they are before he talks about them. So my sequence has changed. He says it here, and I don't know what they are. So now I have to teach the reader what these books are and what they mean, principally to Aruna, before the father says the words. Does that make sense?
I got it.
Yeah.
Basically, the mistake was presuming that everybody knows what Enid Blyton books are.
A little bit, yes. That is sort of the mistake here specifically, but we never want to make assumptions about our readers, and it's actually more important. It's again going back to, it's not about the books, it's about Aruna, right? This story is about Aruna, not the books. So it's not that we need to know about the books. We need to see the books and understand how they affect Aruna.
Okay.
Because that is the subject of this. The subject of this story is Aruna's reaction to her father bringing these books. It is not about the books.
Understood.
Yeah. That's the level that we want to get to.
Okay.
Okay, so that said, I can't help but feel, Ashvani, that this father looks a little bit like you. So this is where I'm going to get to a really big thing. There's a saying in writing to write what you know. Okay, so I am going to tell you in a little bit of a complex way. It's a maxim that people have: write what you know. I don't believe in this maxim. I think instead we have to know what we write about, because I don't think that we need to be restricted. I don't think any author or writer should, or any artist in any way, should be restricted about what material they deal with. But when we take on material, we have to do it as well as we possibly can. It's a responsibility. That said, I think, Ashvani, we have two characters here, the father and Aruna. Of those two characters, I'm going to suggest now you probably understand the father's character maybe a little bit better than the daughter's character. That doesn't mean you can't write about the daughter. But if you do decide to write about the daughter, you have to understand, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's 750 words. It doesn't matter if it was 50 words. It doesn't matter if it was a poem. None of those things matter. If you're going to write from the point of view of Aruna, and this is for everyone, when you write from someone's point of view, you have to know their point of view. Knowing another person's point of view, if they're very different than you, and in this case, Ashvani, this character is quite different from you. You probably do not have the experience of being a daughter. You definitely don't. I don't either. It's of being a woman. You don't have that experience either. Those aspects of character mean that her experience in the world is colored by those aspects of character continually, every single day. How difficult will it be to understand that life? Very difficult.
Very difficult.
I think it's a great thing to try and understand it. That aside, now let's go to characters that are maybe more like us. A father, a walrusy, gray mustache, still retaining our blonde hair, as my daughters tell me I haven't, but I know that they're wrong. We might know that a little bit better, but we still have to do a lot of work as writers, because when we live our life, we don't try to understand our life. But when we write about somebody as a character, we have to understand them fully. We have to understand things about the character that the character doesn't even understand about themselves. Oscar Wilde said, "Only the shallow know themselves." I always like that. But anyway, so the issue of point of view and writing someone's point of view is the biggest challenge that we have. Then, not only do we have to write when we write, so let's say we're writing Aruna, we have to know her point of view. What is it like even to have her father come over? What is it like for her to have her father have a closer relationship perhaps with the child than he had with her? What does it mean to her to have the father bring something into the house that challenges her control over the child's, in a sense, the child's psyche, right, as she sees it? Those are all important things to understand. But when we write, as writers up here, we also actually have to understand, even though we're not writing in the point of view of the character of, let's say, here the father or whoever the antagonist is, we have to understand that character fully as well. We as writer actually have to understand all of our characters completely. It's a big task. But it's a particularly big task when we go into the point of view, because I forget, I think it's Edith Sitwell said, "No truth but point of view," which means that when we're in Aruna's point of view, we want to understand that because of her life experience that you don't know about because you didn't live it, I don't know about, I didn't live it, I don't even know what it's like to be a daughter, I don't know so many things about her life. But when we write in her point of view, we have to understand that everything she sees is biased and colored by her life experience. And so we have to understand her life experience to understand how she sees the world. This is going to be a big wraparound here to the books. That's why I say what we need to do is we need to have the books shown. She needs to see them. And then we need to know how she sees them, right? So she sees them, books, but then how does she see them? She sees them as the devil incarnate. I'm making a little bit of a joke, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
We need both. We need both of those things. We need to see both the reality, the objective reality that they are books, and we need to see the subjective reality that they are an encroachment on her world, an encroachment upon her child, an encroachment upon her modern worldview, which is desperately important to her. And if it should be stripped from her, she'd be left in a kind of chaos, which is what happens when our worldview is disrupted. The same is true for the father, right? Interestingly, right? He sees the books in some kind of objective way, right? He sees that they have pages, but he also has a subjective opinion about the books based on his experience. And he has a worldview that's also attached to his subjective experience. And this is what the clash is, where they're both being threatened, where their worldviews are being threatened, and they're threatening each other. And the result of losing that conflict is a kind of, I don't have good terms for it, but like a kind of emotional chaos. To lose, you know, our worldview is the container for us. You know, it keeps us safe in a sense and helps us feel that we understand what's going on in the world around us, and etc. So I want to say, I love that you have the sketch of it here. You have a protagonist, you have an antagonist, you have them clash. It's a little microcosm of this much larger issue of human beings who have worldviews that clash. And in this case, close human beings, a father and a daughter. I might suggest that you do know, probably intuitively, the father's experience a little bit better. Going back to the write what you know, you might try exploring this from the father's point of view. The thing to realize when we write a story, however, is that it is the protagonist that is, it's the protagonist who changes. It's the protagonist who is tested. It is the protagonist who must grow. So we can't come into a situation where, let's say, you know, I'm writing the story, I'm the father, and I'm writing about my daughter, I'm writing about this conflict with my daughter, and and I turned out to be right and she turned out to be wrong. That's not what happens in the story. What happens is the protagonist is wrong. The protagonist is the one who must learn. The protagonist learns from their conflict with the antagonist. The antagonist, no matter how horrible they might be, and you can think of me when you think of this, no matter how horrible that antagonist is, they are the teacher of the protagonist. That's my big speech, Ashvani. I think this is a great start. I want to see this. I'm fascinated by these 2 points of view about the books. I'm fascinated. Since I don't know the books, you'll need to get that in there so that I can understand what we're really dealing with, so I can evaluate for myself what these characters are feeling about the books. But I like that the father has his perceptions based on his childhood experience with these books, which he sees as positive. And the daughter has a different perception of the books based on her experiences. It's really a perfect story. So focus it, decide who you want to focus on, whether it's going to be the daughter, and then you have to make a commitment to really knowing the daughter, or the father, who you might know a little bit better, but you cannot be easy on. You know, In a story, nobody is right and nobody's wrong, because it's not about right and wrong. A story is about human relationships. It's a great start. I would love to see you develop this piece. If you can develop this piece, here it's 750 words. I agree. I think that this piece should be a little bit longer. You know, if it gets to 3,000 words, it would be great. And you're a wonderful writer. I think you could work on this piece and send it out for some publications. So I would like to see that happen. The shorter you make your story, the more likely it will be taken by publications, because everybody today likes shorter better than longer. No more Proust. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to say two very quick things. One is that sentence which you pointed out, the second paragraph in the story, which is now visible on the screen with all those markings. Probably the lesson there is that the editing is not adequate. I should have, gone through the editing exercise a couple of more times, and then this thing would have been jarring. I mean, maybe in the back of my mind, I knew there was something wrong, but I didn't do enough to mend it. That is the problem, I think. And the other point I wanted to make was about the conflict and the protagonist. In my mind, the story has got a protagonist, which is that daughter, and an antagonist who is the father. And at the end of the story, the protagonist changes her point of view from earlier being totally opposed to the idea of her daughter reading Enid Blyton, till in the end, swayed somewhat by her father's arguments and somewhat by the delight which her daughter feels on looking at the books. She changes her mind and is changed at the end. So in my mind, I thought I had met those requirements, but apparently as a macro picture, it somehow doesn't feel like a story. That's what you're trying to tell me.
Well, I guess I'm saying a little bit that right now it feels like it's sort of an argument about the books, and a story is not about the books. The story is about the relationship of the mother and the father. So in a sense, I'm saying that you really actually have to emphasize and blow up the conflict between the father and the daughter. That's what's at issue. And you have to blow up that conflict so that we amplify that conflict, so that we understand that that's really what's at issue. And then we have to see, in that regard, where does it go so that we have a change of character? Okay. Arguing about whether the books are good or bad is immaterial. And I mean, the reason why I say it's immaterial is that your reader is not going to connect to it, because it doesn't matter. It's sort of like, yeah, I mean, do you like mushu pork or not? Who cares, at the end of the day. But the relationship is the universal story. Our desire to connect with people who are important to us, our desire to, go back to connecting, feeling that love, feeling that sense of safety, feeling that, that's the realm that we're talking about. And so if she were to change in that regard, you really have, what you really need to have happen in this story is there needs to be reconciliation between their characters. Because right now they're at odds, and that does not happen. They're at odds. She might acquiesce about the books, but that doesn't change anything about their relationship. And the relationship is the story. So we need to build that so that we can move that to some kind of reconciliation. It's a really great start, though. And the way I look at it, the books are just a conceit. They're a vehicle for this other story. So, but I think that the books are a great conceit. And I have the feeling that they would be very interesting. I mean, a very interesting vehicle for our experience. And the other thing, Ashwani, you have to be very careful of is, remember when I talk about the protagonist and antagonist must be equals. Right now, it can feel like the father's right and the daughter's wrong. And that means that what happens is sort of inevitable. She accepts it, da, 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 da. That's an imbalanced story. The daughter can't be wrong. She's not wrong. The father is not wrong either. They just have different points of view.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Otis.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question here? Can multiple point of view can be played around in this story? If the father is there, the daughter is there, and the granddaughter is also there. So multiple point of view can be used in the story, can it not? I'm just asking because I have a question. I have a very doubt about point of view when I start writing about it. I find it really difficult to write choosing point of view. So I wanted to know about the point of view, using example of this story, since the story is quite good. I'm really enjoying it. So if you can give me insight into it.
Yeah. So in this story, the point of view actually moves around. So we're in different points of view. This is the way I look at it. We need to be focused, basically. So I think we're better off having one point of view. The point of view character is the protagonist, and we choose the protagonist with the reason we emphasize their point of view is that we have to give them a lot of attention. We want to give them attention through what they understand, how they understand the world objectively, and how they understand it subjectively. And through that, we move them through the course of the story, and they're the ones who will change. If you use multiple points of view, I think then we have an obligation to have both characters change. That becomes harder. If we have all three, if we have the mother, the daughter, the mom, the father, and the daughter all there together, then they would all have to change. I'm just going to tell you from my point of view, we tend to use multiple points of view. Ashwani, it's not on you, but we're a little bit lazy. It's easy. It's easy to write multiple points of view. It's really hard to truly understand a character. The biggest issue in our writing is truly understanding a miraculous human being and getting them on the page. When we jump from points of view, then we can be like, we treat them all superficially. And that's what happens. We have multiple points of view. We have superficial characters. We concentrate on a single character. We frame that person and we elevate them. That's what we do usually in literary work. Okay, so a simple way to think about it with multiple points of view, and these things do get played with, absolutely. But the simple way to think of it nowadays is that literary work tends to emphasize character and tends to restrict itself in terms of point of view. Genre work, spy novels, crime novels, tend to emphasize plot, and because it's easier, have multiple points of view. That's the simple way that I divide it. Literary work tends to emphasize character, human beings, right? And does not emphasize plot as much. Obviously, it's a continuum, right? And genre work emphasizes plot more and character less. So you decide what you want to do. What kind of work do you want to write?
Thank you so much.
This is definitely not a plot-oriented story. It's an emotional, character-driven story. So I think that Ashwani would be well served to emphasize the character. I think we had a discussion already about Chekhov, who I can't get Ashwani to read, I guess.
I had a question, Otis, if you have time for it.
Yeah.
So this is, if we are to write about characters who are not us, how do we get to know them better? How do we get into the skin of those characters who are not like us?
Right? Well, I mean, you know the answer to that already, kind of. I mean, you do this work, so it's an imaginative act, right? It's an
Right.
imaginative act that we also, that I think that we lead a little bit with our intellect. The first way we lead it with our intellect is to understand that people are formed by their experiences and that those experiences are very different. So even if I mean, I have an embarrassing story to tell about me trying to write from a woman's point of view that I'm not going to tell here, you know, now. But sometime when we're all hanging out, I'll tell this story. But anyway, to let us understand first intellectually that we do not know anyone else's point of view. That's the first thing that we have to do. If we can admit that we have no idea how they see the world, that's a good start. Now we try to learn and understand. I think that's where we can begin.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think that we even have to apply that when we definitely have to apply that when we base characters on ourselves. I mean, that in a lot of ways, I've based a lot of characters that I've written on myself over time, and they've not always been my most successful characters by any means. But through that process, I've actually also learned about myself.
Right.
Because I've objectified, the writer objectifies while also trying to imagine the subjective experience. So it's something like that. Does that make sense? We're sort of objectively looking at the subjective experience. What happens within characters, right? Characters themselves think that their biased subjective experience is objective, right? That's what characters do. That's what all human beings do. They think that their biased point of view and their biased perceptions are objective. What we do as writers is we have to see objectively that we have characters who do just that, right? Who see the world subjectively, but think that they're seeing it objectively. That's what we do as writers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to dig deeply into that character trait.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's a little bit complicated.
It's complicated, yeah. And I don't know, because I was grappling with wanting to write about, to adapt a book into a play, but I have no idea about the world of that character. Who's a prominent character. So, you know, a politician, say. So now sitting here in a, you know, unpolitical, apolitical world and imagining trying to become that would not be an easy task. But yeah, maybe finding a human angle to that character.
Well, we definitely want to find a human angle, because that is a common denominator. To know ourselves as a human being is a great base. So we want to understand ourselves as a human being, but we also want to understand this other thing that we create, this kind of ego or whatever it is, that basically is a subjective construction of ourselves. So we want to use both. We don't often actually think about our human base, but we as writers definitely want to see that in the vast majority, we're actually very much the same. We're the same human animal platform upon which other things are built. So we do want to know those universal aspects. You know, we all get frightened. We all want safety. We all want connection. We all want control. We all want a lot of things in common. So we should know that. We can't think, oh, well, I like to have control, but so-and-so doesn't. That's not true. Oh, I am sometimes afraid of things, but so-and-so isn't. That's not true. We are an animal that reacts in very predictable ways. And so that is a base. But then we also have ideas and we have strategies based on our experience, you know, and we want to understand those.
Right. Yeah, that helps. That helps.
And to me, they're very much the same. Some people are like, oh, there's characters, there's good people and bad people. I'm not like that at all. I think that we are wired to survive, and we figure out how to survive,
Right.
given our context.
Right.
The other thing that I do, when I do what I consider experiential research. So if I'm thinking about a character, so I wrote about someone in the military, and he was a sharpshooter. So I went out and I did some shooting. Because he marched a lot with something that was long and heavy, I cut a piece of pipe, I filled it with concrete, and I walked through the hills with it. I want to know, because our experiences as human beings are not just intellectual experiences, and actually they're mostly not. They're perceptive experiences. They are physical experiences. So I want to understand those physical experiences. I think it's the most fun work, but I will not ever say that it's easy.
Yeah.
And we should not say that it's easy. And that the presumption that it is, or that we have some divine right to be able to write someone else's point of view, does not exist. We have to work hard for it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
We have to do the work. We have to do the work. The legwork, as we call it, right, in the business. We have to do the legwork. That doesn't mean, and I really mean it. I mean, physical work.
Yes. That's helpful to start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, I mean, I like talking about this, but the other thing, when we're thinking about investing our time with a character, we want to understand, we want to see. So this is true, all characters. Every character combines two things: the universal element and the unique element.
Right.
So we want to be able to understand the universal element, because so the character that I write about that's not me, I have to understand my universal connection with that character. That's most of it, right? I can feel that character with almost everything based on our universal sympathy, right? And resonance with each other. But then I also have to understand the unique experience, right? The things, so like I have the unique experience of all my life, people have looked at me as being a man, a boy and a man, right? For example. That has completely changed my perception of the world, that I've been looked at that way all my life. And a girl and a woman, has been looked at as a girl and a woman all her life. That has completely changed the way that she looks at the world, as an example. But every aspect of our unique experience colors the way we look at the world. So it's just fascinating to start to get into that realm. It's where I think it's why I write, for sure. Let's talk about Jay's work. Jay, jump on here. Tell us a little bit about this.
Hi, Otis.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for sending in something. Appreciate it.
Okay, so this is a continuation of earlier pieces I had shared. It takes off from there, where we had a conversation between somebody and somebody else in the middle of darkness, by the riverside, where he came in. I don't know if you remember that one. This is a continuation of that, where they spoke about, where they were planning a conspiracy.
Okay.
Which is why I hadn't indicated the time frame or context or setting, for that matter, because I thought it was a continuation from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jay, I read a lot, so I gotta, you gotta cut me some slack, as they say. But the issue, yeah, well, one, I like this piece. There's a lot of action. You're really, you're really developing your ability to get down into the character doing things. Like I can feel the imaginative process that you're engaged in. Like you become this person in a sense. And then as I'm reading it, I also feel like I'm participating in the events along with this person. And this character here, Donna, really has a personality, right? And I like that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit. So just, right, the things go back to, when poor Ashvani, right? I railed on his story for an hour and a half and, talking about that book, but using this as the book as an example. When I said, when I read the title of that book, nothing is going on in my brain. Okay. When I read the word building, nothing goes on in my brain. Or, okay. Right? It's so vague, right? There's no detail there. So regardless of whether I already know what the building might look like or not, you don't want me to read any words in which nothing is happening in my brain. That's a big danger.
Mm-hmm. Otis, what if I had ended the previous paragraph by speaking about them going to sleep in a rest house, and then the next paragraph has this mention of the building?
So
because that's how it is.
Right. Well, I think it's true. Everything I teach, it's not a bunch of rules, I don't think. Okay, so I definitely want you to grapple with them yourself. I basically teach from the perspective of we have to deal with this pesky reader, this pesky human being, and the human brain, right? It's their human brain that really is our antagonist as writers. If we could just write whatever words we wanted, that would be great. But we have to deal with the fact of this reader and how they perceive those words. This is something that I think, because I've thought a lot about this pesky reader who is actually just like me. So this is the way I learn about the reader, is that it seems to me that I bear down into a text when I get details. When I get specific, concrete details, they focus me. They make me zoom in, right? And that's very engaged. But when I don't get those, then I sort of fade out into the distance. That's how I feel when I read. So when I write, I employ that. Like that understanding of myself and how I read also shapes the way I write. So, and I have definitely done this. I have, like, I was talking about the character who was the military person, and there's a point where he's sitting in the desert, and I focus in on the fleas, the sand fleas that are moving through the hairs on his arm.
Okay.
I did well with that piece, Jay. I did pretty well with it. So I'm just going to say that I got positive feedback from going into those details.
Okay.
I would suggest it. It's harder to go into details, isn't it, though, than it is to write vague words like building.
So, Otis, I have a question there. So, I have also read this in several other places, and you have stressed upon this several times, that it is important to get the details because that is what engages the reader. It allows them to build a picture of the setting of the scene. But and on the other hand, I've read, say, for example, if you look at Tom Clancy's works, right, and they have obviously a huge following, but in some places his writing gets very detailed, and I'm sure there's a huge fan following for that. But I start to feel that here is about 8 pages that is describing the inside of say a submarine, for example. And at what point, writing for a general audience, do you decide what is a heuristic that you can use to decide that, okay, this is enough detail at which point I can stop and I can move on. And you know what, this is where the reader may appreciate a little more detail than just, 2 or 3 lines that I have already put in.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, this isn't really, it's actually kind of a complex writing issue. So like what you're telling me about Clancy, and this is something that I've dealt with too, is that sometimes writers, we do a lot of research. We do a lot of research I do tons of research in order to find language a lot of the time. We do not want to write our work probably that's overloaded with details, because too much detail is actually also stultifying. So this is again, my continuum is like this. There are 2 things that we want to avoid: boredom and confusion. And to me, you can actually see this continuum really kind of on a circle, because boredom and confusion are kind of, they seem to join to me at the bottom of the circle, right? So we're kind of going like that. Too much detail is boring. It's also confusing, right? Too little detail is also kind of boring, and it's also confusing, right? Because we can't see, or we see too much. We need to find we need to find the sweet spot in between those 2 things. And I think that what I like to do is I like to pan out and pan in, just like in the movies, right? We see the shot coming in over Miami, right? We've seen that shot hundreds of times at this point. And then we go down into the little bodega, and then we see the drip come down the beer bottle, and I don't know, I think we ought to kill him. That's what we do, right? So I like that, I like doing different things, but the main thing, so if we think about that continuum, we want to avoid boredom and confusion, and we have a sweet spot, which I would say is necessary complexity, right? We want to, that is the state of engagement that we want to try to achieve, that sort of necessary complexity, complex enough, but also understandable. That's why I detail the flea, but I don't detail other things. When I go to the detail, I focus the attention, they're riveted, then I come back and I pan out and they still are gathering everything. I always want to have that, but I want to vary it so they don't feel like they're being hit with a ball-peen hammer.
Right. No, that's a very fair point. I'll tell you from my personal experience, and perhaps Jay has also experienced some of that, which is that in some cases I deliberately leave out details, because what I end up feeling is that I think the reader will want to imagine some of the things on their own, and if I give them every bit of detail, that might seem like I'm talking down to the reader. So that's some level of confusion that at times I have. I know, for example, when writing that, I know that yes, some little detail might be useful. I don't know for sure whether it would be, and if I make the decision not to add the detail, it's probably because I'm thinking that let the reader, imagine some of these things. Perhaps the reader may want to imagine some of these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that again, it's a balance point. I mean, what you're talking about with Clancy, it seems to me when we write too much detail, it's basically because we want to show off all of our research. And Clancy has made something of a career of being an outsider who does his research, and he's also gained access to a lot of things. And so he wants to tell the world that he has all of that. His career is kind of built on it, in fact, so that he has all this access. And so he demonstrates it. I also do a lot of research, and I have to be very careful about overdoing it. I was going to say Raymond Carver, on the other hand, who is someone that we should all read. And please, everyone who's working in short stories, read What We Talk About When We Talk About Love by Raymond Carver. So that's a tremendous collection of short stories. He's a very spare writer. He wasn't even that spare originally, but he had an editor at the New Yorker who took out a lot of his language and left something that was more spare. But what ends up being there is the right amount to inspire, engage the imagination of the reader. That's the thing that's crucial. We need something to be happening in terms of that engagement. That's the number one thing. So we need to figure out what that is. I don't want to bear down on it too much, but like for me, if this is during a period, let's say, let's put it at 18th century, we'll put it back 10,000 years or something like that. I might want to know, if I see building, I might want to know what the buildings were made out of. Then I would think about, if they're made out of some kind of sandstone, then maybe I would have him put his hand on the sandstone. I know that it's sandstone. I don't need to write that, but I want to get the details right. When he puts his hand on there, it's rough and leaves a fine dust on his hand. I don't know. I mean, I want to use my research and incorporate it into the work. And like I said before, I use research to give me language and to give me accuracy and to give me maybe a sense of confidence about what I'm saying. I don't want to not have that confidence and not have that understanding of the world, because then I won't, I won't put the words on the page that evoke that world. I don't know if that made sense. I feel like I went in a circle. But anyway, Jay, let's keep going a little bit here. But I like this very much. I like that we have this character, and this is how I read this. A spot near his temple reminded them that he needed 3 tumblers less of today and 3 hours more of sleep.
That's actually toddy, not today. That's an autocorrect problem.
But what is it?
Toddy. It's like country liquor.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the autocorrect maybe threw me a little bit, but I still like the idea of it. Like that sometimes autocorrect is our poetic friend, 3 tumblers less of today. I like that idea. He needed 3 tumblers less of today. I like it. But whether it's toddy, which it might be not as good, and I've definitely made mistakes that I've kept, Jay. I will tell you. That is
okay.
I take serendipity, the muse or whatever it is that guides us. But 3 tumblers less of today. I like his character as being sort of like he's hungover. He's been a bit sauced. He went, carousing the night before. I thought we were dealing with something that was going to be a little hard boiled at this point. He comes out of so because I didn't know where we were. I didn't know where we started. I couldn't see anything with the building. I thought we were dealing with like Sam Spade or, it sounds a little bit, he needed about 3 tumblers less of today and 4 more hours of sleep. And then in walked the dame, then in walked the dame is usually the next thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like that character. I feel like even though the setting changed for me as I read, I still felt that character was well established and consistent throughout this entire piece. So I like that. He's kind of brash. He kind of drinks too much. He might get in a fight and then slap you on the back in the morning and said, "What a good time we had last night." I like all of that. Back to the vague. Okay. A tall man in the vortex of chaos. Okay, I would like you right now, Jay, to close your eyes and imagine the vortex of chaos.
All right, I get what you mean.
You have it? You see something? No, you don't. You don't see the vortex of chaos.
I get what you mean.
Okay. But it goes back to the language. It goes back to this pesky reader that we have, this human animal that's on the other side of our words. The way our brains work. There's a couple things that I think, like writing-wise, we should kind of try to avoid. Obviously, these broad, vague words are difficult for us to deal with without having details that ground the reader. But also collective words, the crowd, right? Again, I go back to this a lot. Close your eyes and imagine the crowd. can't do it. We can imagine specific details. And so even though sometimes we do want to have a wide picture, we also want to make sure that we focus. You know, the crowd surged and a small boy holding a teddy bear was pushed against the fence, right? So the crowd, I don't see anything, but now once I focus on the kid and the teddy bear pushed against the fence, I do start to see things.
Yeah.
This is the thing with our brain, you know, it's a brain thing. And I'm mentioning, you know, throughout this beginning, like I say, I'm not really always clear about what's going on, but I understand that this is taken out of context, so that's fine. Just, you want to just make sure that sentence by sentence, I think I've said this before, you know, we're writing a collection of words, right? They move along on this line. We want to use this idea of expectation and surprise over and over again. We use it paragraph by paragraph, we use it sentence by sentence, and we use it word by word. I always want the reader to be anticipating the next word, being driven towards it, and then I want to surprise them with it. I want them to be engaged in every word. There is not a single word that I want the reader to feel disengaged from. I have to manage that because I can't have the same level of intensity all along, because I will exhaust my reader with intensity. Although, given various problems, I'll take that one. But I don't want to exhaust them. I want them to be able to relax sometimes, and then I want them to be intensely engaged and then relaxed engaged. Again, I want it to move in that way, but I do not ever want them to leave the page. That's my mandate. Because you know, we have to face it, Jay, you know, we're asking for the reader's time, and as brilliant as we think we are, the reader has a lot of other things that they could do. They could read any other book that's ever been written instead of ours. That's one. They could see any other movie. They could watch a movie instead of reading our book. They could see any TV show. They could go outside and they could, you know, yell at somebody. They could get as much action as they wanted in a heartbeat. So we have to realize that we're in competition basically with life itself. We're asking the reader to remove themselves from life itself and go into our book. So we have to take that competition very seriously. I learned that at Stanford. I went there with writers who were amazing, and I'm like, oh my God, I better be good, because they're never going to read my work. They're always going to read Adam Johnson's work. Ugh! How I hated him, Jay. And same with you, Jay. You're in competition with me and everyone here and everyone on earth to get the attention of your reader. So you really got to work for it. But I can tell that you are going to. Right, I got this. When we get this, the palm leaf shriveled back into a tight roll. Now I'm getting a detail that's telling me something about it. I
needed this a page ago.
You know, this is the kind of detail. So if I'm writing about this historical time period, have you ever seen a palm leaf that was inscribed upon?
Yeah.
So I would like, if I knew I was writing about it, I would go and look at that again, or I would look at pictures and I would try and get some detail out of it. Like some detail that then I could put into this moment. You know, how does it crackle? How does it, you know, what does the writing look like? What is it, you know, is it indent? Something to like make this seem real. So it doesn't just seem like, oh yeah, the palm leaf and you know, we want to make it seem like it's a real object that's being handled. The captain pretended not to notice. It's just, you know, I understand how that could be in the character's point of view, but it's unclear to me that it is. So You know, he
Yeah,
could be
this I wanted
witnessing.
to ask you about. I mean, because my POV thus far has been with Dhana, should I stick to it, or I mean, this is clearly something that the captain has noticed, and we need to tell the we need to, let's say, show the reader that there is a gleam of excitement in Dhana's eyes when he's been told to follow with the entourage of the princess, that he is excited about it. And I thought it'd be better if that excitement is told not from Dhana's own perspective, but from an observer's perspective.
So this is the way I look at it. Again, I go back to the pesky reader, right? Damn reader. So in our lives, the way we live our lives is we live in a single point of view only our entire life. We might think we know other people's point of view, but we don't. We live in our point of view. So this is our most natural form. When we get the reader, when we engage the reader and draw them into the point of view of a character, that's a very big achievement. It takes a lot of work. If we have the reader in this point of view and then we pull them out and we throw them into this minor character's point of view, and now they're suddenly standing here looking this way, it seems to be a little bit of a violence that we're doing to the reader.
Okay.
Right? I mean, we're sort of taking their consciousness out of one character and throwing it into another just to suit our purposes. And when we do that, we also, I mean, then we actually, I think we have the responsibility to actually get them engaged in this point of view. Do we really want to do that with the captain? No, I don't think so. It is harder to write in a single point of view, Jay. It is more difficult. It will make you a better writer if you try to do it. Okay. It's easy to jump in. It's easy to write these vague sentences. The captain pretended not to notice. What did he do? What is it? What does a person do when they pretend not to notice something? Or did he smirk? Right? Or did he
maintain a poker face?
Right. What does he do? Right? Because it's our business not to tell things, right? When we say the captain pretended not to notice is being told something, instead we want to show it so that the reader understands it. So what do we do? And Jay, everyone here, I mean, I remember the first time I was writing something and I was like, I started acting it out because I needed to figure out what was happening. I knew what I wanted to have happen, but I didn't know how to say it. So what was the physical motion? So if I say, how do I show the captain pretended not to notice? The captain kicked a rock in the dirt. Dana, I would not want to write this. Dana, let's see. Yes, and the entourage of the princess, Dana said, he felt his eyes widening and he tried to suppress his grin. The captain kicked a stone in the dirt, said, oh, you're pretty interested in where she goes, eh? Right? So okay. Because what I want to do is I want the reader to think, I want the reader to feel, and I just want to put the dramatic information on the page so that they can do it. Okay. One way to think about it like this too, Jay, if you wanted, think about it as a scene that you were shooting as a movie, right? You can't have a narrator come in and tell you what's happening on the screen. Right here, let's see, the captain's pretending not to notice. What would the actor do? This is the thing for us. The thing for us as writers is that the movie analogy is a good one. We have to control the camera. It pans out, focuses in. So we have to be the cameraman. But we also have to build the set, right? We also have to be the costume designer for everybody. We also have to know the interiority of every actor. We have to know the motivation of every character. We have to do every single job. In the movies, they have hundreds of people to do these separate jobs, but when we write, we have to do every job ourselves. And it's not like we can just say, oh, well, we don't need that job done. We need the job done. So here you have a narrator talking for the captain, And what we want to do instead is we want to have an actor on the page doing the thing that you're describing. You're the director, but you need the actor. But it's good. I love this little scene. You know, I like it. It has the, you know, I like this guy being interested in where the princess is and having to deal with this captain to try and find it out. You know, all of that is a lot of fun. And I feel that they're real characters. I feel that the captain is maybe, you know, the captain is maybe a little bit of a stereotype. So, you know, when you make the movie, you have to worry about that. You don't want stereotypes. Stereotypes don't engage. The reason we don't have stereotypes is because they're not surprising. Stereotypes are not surprising. And we need anticipation and surprise. That's why we can't have stereotypes. So we want to do a little bit better than that. But still, I have a good sense of them interacting. And I also have a sense of the fun you're having with these characters. As I mentioned here, I feel involved here. So anyway, I think that this is good work. I think the main thing is to get into those details. Yes, handle that handle the point of view and do that hard work. You know, the details are part of it, right? So like when I kick the stone, that's a detail. That's a detail I did not have to do. Well, right. If I'm talking about the papyrus paper or the palm leaf paper. Okay, so I do research on that by going to the museum, breaking the glass open, taking it, and then crumpling it in my hands and listening to it as it hits the ground. And then I listen to the bell, you know, as they arrest me. So I do that kind of research. But when I have the character, when I have the captain, as you write, when you have the captain pretending not to notice, then I do a different kind of research. I do the research of, what do I do when I pretend not to notice something? Does that make sense? That's also research. I'm trying to think. I do thinking research. I do acting out research. When I pretend, oh, sorry, I hit something. When I pretend not to notice, I go like that. You know, I rotate my head in a half circle. Drawing the figure of a moon with my nose. I mean, what absurd way am I going to describe that? But this is what I have to do as a writer. And that is also research. No easy path, Jay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Especially when we write history fiction, like let's say our story goes back 1,000 years or 1,500 years. How about using modern metaphors, like something like the captain put on a poker face, but poker is something that comes later from the time period of your story. So does that fit in?
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. So again, going like, okay, so remember we have the reader and we put the point of view into the reader. We're also taking that reader and putting him into this character, into this time. When we say poker face, we take that reader, we yank them out of that time period, and we throw them into the modern world. And then we want to put it back in there. So basically, remember I have boredom and confusion? That starts going towards confusion. Are they here or are they here? Are they here or are they here?
All right.
I wouldn't do that anachronistic thing. Writing ancient history is very difficult. It is difficult because we don't see it very well. So we have to do the research and we have to be very creative in our research to figure out how we can see it and then how to stay there. You know, was there a different gambling game that they might have played? Dice, perhaps? Right?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
You know, we just have to do that hard work. But yes,
the metaphor also has to be in line with the time frame of the story.
I think so. But again, I base everything going back to that pesky reader of ours, that pesky human being and the human brain. We don't react that well to being pulled, yanked this way and that way. We don't. We want to be situated. We want to be contained. we want to not be confused. Confusion is chaos, and we tend not to like chaos. We don't. So even if we're writing something that's chaotic, we want to write it clearly so that the reader doesn't experience it as chaos. We do not want to go to the emotions of confusion or boredom. We do not. Both of those mean we lose the reader. Do not do it. Stay with clarity, contain them, locate them, move them clearly from place to place if you're doing it. If I were doing it, if I needed to have the poker face, I would then I would be in character point of view, and then I might have a narrative point of view. I might say, the captain looked at him. If we were evaluating the captain today, we'd say he had a poker face. But at the time, they had no game like poker. They played dice, and they played it seriously. The loser would die, and the captain had a face like that he might die if he revealed a single thing, right? I would do that kind of thing. There's always a way to do it, but do we want to do it that way? What is the best way to do it? That's always a question. All right, friends, I think I better go. Any last questions? We bludgeoned the hell out of these two pieces today. Thank you so much for. No, I'm really. Both of these works are strong. I was, when I was thinking about these pieces before we met, I was thinking about how strong they are and how they both have given us the ability to talk at this higher level about our work. Both of these pieces, Ashvani's piece got a conflict on the page with characters. That is the base. That's such a strong base to now build a really effective story. I am not trying to tell you that any of this is easy. When I say to Ashvani that, if he does the work on this story, I think he can publish it. This story is a long way from being published, but it lets you know a little bit how good it has to be and how deep and evocative it has to be to actually get published and get a reader. Being a writer is a great job. I'm going to tell you, everybody would do it if it were easy. Everybody would. It's a great job. No bosses. You get to live in your own world, right? And make up stuff. It's great. It's very, very difficult. We have to do the legwork. I really think it's true for those of us who are really called to writing. It isn't the easiest thing that we could do. It is the hardest thing we could possibly do. And for some reason, we're still compelled to do it. I don't know why. We're, gluttons for punishment, right? But both of these works are great. They have characters on the page. I feel that those characters are becoming realized. It's a wonderful start. So I really enjoyed the reading this week.
Thank you, Otis, and thank you, everyone. We will, as always, put this session up on YouTube in a couple of days and share the link out. So please keep sending the pieces in, and we will talk to you same time in 1 week from now. Thank you, Otis. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Otis.
Thank you very much.
Bye.